Okay, let's talk about psychedelic therapy. It's everywhere right now, right? But here's the thing. There's this massive debate at the heart of it all about how it actually works. I mean, is it purely biological? Is the drug itself just flipping switches and fixing broken circuits in the brain? Or is it all psychological? You know, the deep, mystical experience and the therapy that really does the healing. Well, today we're going to dive into a really cool new idea, a framework that tries to bring both of those sides together. And it does it by making a connection to something you would probably never expect, how our brains learn to see.
So yeah, how does it actually work? I mean, this is the question, right? It's the engine behind this whole psychedelic renaissance. And for the longest time, the conversation has been stuck between two pretty different camps. So in one corner, you've got the purely biological view. The idea here is that these drugs are basically super fast-acting antidepressants. They kickstart neuroplasticity, and that physically rewires or fixes the faulty circuits in your brain. Then in the other corner, you have the purely psychological view. And this side says, no, the drug is just a tool. The real magic happens in the experience, the profound insights you get during therapy. That's what allows the mind to heal. And for so long, it's really been framed as an either-or thing. It has to be one or the other.
But what if it's not either-or? What if it's both? Well, to understand how that could be possible, we need to take a little detour. A kind of surprising one, actually. We need to go back to the basics of neuroscience and look at how our brains learn stuff in the first place. And it all comes down to this idea of a critical window.
I mean, just think about how easily kids pick up a new language, right? Or learn social cues. It seems effortless. That's because when we're young, our brains go through these special periods where they are just like sponges. They're incredibly flexible, super sensitive to everything going on around them. And these are what we call windows of opportunity, where learning happens incredibly fast.
Now, there's a fancy scientific name for this, of course. It's called critical period plasticity. And really, all it means is that for a little while, the brain is in this temporary state where it's just primed to learn from the world around it. It's using those experiences to build the circuits, the pathways that it's going to rely on for the rest of your life. It's an amazing time for growth, for sure. But it's also a time when things can go wrong.
And this is a perfect example of that vulnerability. Let's look at how we learn to see. If a kid has something wrong with one eye, like a cataract maybe, and it's blocking clear vision during this critical window, well, the brain basically gives up on that eye. It wires the visual cortex incorrectly. And what you get is a condition called amblyopia, or lazy eye. And the key thing to get here is that the eye itself might be fine. The problem is the brain never learned how to use it properly.
And here's the really crucial part. Once that special learning window for vision closes, the brain slams on the brakes. The plasticity goes way down, and those circuits become stable. They lock in. And that's exactly why, for hundreds of years, everyone just assumed you couldn't fix a lazy eye in an adult. That window of opportunity, it was considered permanently shut.
But what if it wasn't? What if you could find a way to pry that window back open, even just a little bit? Well, this is where things get really interesting, because neuroscience made a discovery that pretty much changed everything.
So scientists discovered that certain drugs, like the common antidepressant fluoxetine, for example, could actually go in and pharmacologically release those brakes on plasticity. They could make an adult brain temporarily flexible and adaptable again, almost like a kid's brain. They could literally reopen that closed window.
And this discovery led to a whole new three-step approach to fixing a lazy eye in adults. So, step 1, you give a drug that acts as a critical period opener. It takes the brakes off and makes that part of the brain flexible again. But, and listen, this is probably the most important part of this whole explainer, the drug alone does nothing to fix the vision. It just opens the window. That's why step 2 is absolutely essential. You need the right kind of therapy, the right environmental input. In this case, that means putting a patch on the strong eye to force the brain to start using the weaker one. It's only when you combine the drug with the therapy that you get to step 3. The adult brain can actually rewire itself and vision can be restored.
And that, right there, is the core idea. The drug is not the cure. It doesn't fix anything by itself. All it does is create the opportunity for a cure. It just makes the brain receptive and sensitive to change again so that the real work of therapy can actually take hold.
Okay, so now we bring it all back home. If a drug can reopen a window for learning how to see, could a different kind of drug reopen a window for, say, emotional learning? Could it reopen a window for healing from trauma or for overcoming depression?
And that is the heart of this new framework. The theory is that psychedelics might just be the key that unlocks these critical periods for emotional and psychological learning in the adult brain, creating this incredible, fertile ground for psychotherapy to work its magic.
So let's just lay it all out. Think about it this way. The same way that a lack of good visual input can lead to a lazy eye, the theory suggests that maybe trauma or chronic stress can lead to things like depression or PTSD. They're like faulty wiring in the brain. So in this new model, the psychedelic is the critical period opener. It's the drug that unlocks the potential for change. And the psychotherapy? That's the patch therapy. That's the carefully guided corrective experience that helps the brain rewire itself in a healthy new way.
Yeah, the researchers who proposed this idea put it really well. They said that psychedelics may essentially remove the brakes on adult neuroplasticity, creating a state that's a lot like what our brains experienced back when we were developing as kids.
And look, this isn't just a neat idea. There's already some really interesting evidence pointing in this direction. There was this one study with mice where they found that MDMA could reopen a critical period for social reward learning, basically making adult mice open to learning social skills again. But here's the crazy part, the part that fits our theory perfectly. This only happened when the mice were actually in a social setting, with other mice. If you gave the drug to mice that were all alone, nothing. It had no effect. Which just hammers home how critical the environment, the context, really is.
So why does any of this matter? What's the big deal about this framework? Well, it's a huge deal because it beautifully solves that big debate we started with, the whole drug versus therapy argument.
It shows us that it was never about the drug or the therapy. It's about the drug and the therapy working together. The drug's job is to put the brain into this temporary, superplastic open state, making it ready to learn and change. And the therapy's job is to provide the new, safe, and structured input that the brain needs to guide all that change towards real, lasting healing.
So, to wrap it all up, this critical period model brings the biological and psychological sides of the story together perfectly. It tells us that psychedelics probably don't cure anything directly. Instead, they create this temporary state of incredible brain flexibility. And that means the environment, the famous set and setting of the therapy session, isn't just some fluffy, nice-to-have detail. It's a crucial active ingredient in the whole process. And really, it reframes the entire goal. We're not just trying to get rid of symptoms anymore, we're trying to help the brain tap into its own power to adapt, to learn, and to heal itself.
And that kind of leaves us with a pretty profound question to chew on, doesn't it? If the adult brain isn't this fixed, rigid thing we thought it was, if these powerful windows for learning and change can actually be reopened, what does that really mean for the future of healing? I mean, it goes way beyond just psychedelic therapy. It could change how we approach healing altogether.